العديد من المؤتمرات تتعلق في القيادة في الحوادث وإدارة الحوادث على المستوى الوطني. كما حصل على شهادات في هيئات الإطفاء. ندعو الآن السيد ستيفن ليتل للصعود إلى المنصة لإلقاء كلمته. Please, the stage is yours.
Hello, everybody. My name's Steve Little. I'm a battalion chief with the Chicago Fire Department. I have 36 years on the job. The last 7, I've been assigned to the downtown battalion number 1. And in those last 7 years, I've been the incident commander at over 3,000 high-rise incidents. It's an honor to be here in Dubai and a privilege to talk to you today about high-rise management. I would like to share with you how the CFD has dealt with some of the world's deadliest fires, what we've learned and how we've trained our firefighters and educated the public to successfully mitigate or control the next fire incident. By the way, a high-rise in the city of Chicago is defined as any building over 80 feet or 25 meters tall. So just so you kind of understand where we're coming at when I mention the word high-rise. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Chicago. Population 2.8 million, about 234 square miles or 606 kilometers. Amount of high-rise buildings over 1,744 of which are over 183 meters tall. And there's a picture out of my car looking at the city coming from one of our harbors. About the Chicago Fire Department, about 4,500 members, fire and EMS, 98 firehouses plus 3 fireboats, 99 engines, 61 hook and ladders, 4 heavy rescues, 74 ambulances. We also have a variety of specialized equipment, including hazmat units, air-sea rescue units, collapse and trench rescues, smoke ejectors, ventilation units, light wagons. We also have a high-rise unit that specifically has equipment for high-rise fires. There's a picture of my car with the backdrop of the city. So to continue, no presentation of the city of Chicago would be complete without a brief history of the city's catastrophic fires and how these events forged a world-class fire department. We started burning our city down back in 1871, literally with over 300 fire deaths involved in a Great Chicago Fire. Thousands of buildings over 3 square miles or 8 kilometers were destroyed. The fire department was totally overwhelmed. Changes that occurred, the fire equipment was updated, changes in building construction. We had basically a tinderbox back then. We had a lot of frame construction. Everything was on top of each other. It was a city that grew up in a hurry, which is somewhat similar to Dubai, I guess, in that respect. The city grew up pretty much overnight. We didn't have real strict fire codes, and as a result, we ended up burning the city down. So that takes us to... and here's just a couple of slides. You can see how just how bad it was. I mean, literally, people were running for their lives and trying to cross the bridge there. That's what the middle of the downtown area looked like the day after, and not a real pretty sight. So, but we've come a long way since then. Moving on, we had the Iroquois Theater fire, which was devastating. The Iroquois Theater was a beautiful new live stage performance theater in downtown Chicago. It had a seating capacity of 1,600 with a large main floor and 2 balconies. On the day of the fire, the theater was at full capacity. There were over 602 fire deaths as a result of this deadly fire. It's the deadliest building fire in U.S. history. Changes that occurred, again, we go back to the codes, the fire prevention codes. There were so many things that were done wrong in a building that prided itself when it was built that it was said it was fireproof. For us to have that kind of loss of life is just unbelievable. So we had to update our fire codes. We had to update fire-resistant materials. The materials that were used in a fireproof building proved to be extremely fire-friendly. We needed better means of egress. People couldn't get out. The doors came in. The doors didn't go out. We've got to limit the number of occupants in these buildings. In this particular fire, people were just jammed in, standing room only. People literally couldn't move. This is kind of like what it looked like prior to the fire. Here's the devastation after. The fire started up above the main curtain. The curtain, which was supposed to be fireproof, started to burn. And people were just incinerated. They just couldn't move. They couldn't get out. Here's kind of a rare shot. This was in the alley behind. If you notice that little staircase there, right there, that's a fire escape. It's an outside fire staircase. We still have them on a lot of our older buildings. That literally went nowhere. That fire escape went up and went nowhere and did not get anybody out. So people ended up dying as a result. They had no place to go. Just a terrible tragedy. That brings us to the LaSalle Hotel fire of 1946. The LaSalle Hotel was a 23-story high-rise that boasted 1,000 rooms in downtown Chicago. The luxurious hotel was hailed as the largest, safest, and most modern when it was built in 1908. It also was the tallest building in Chicago when it was completed. Again, a 23-story or an 80-meter high-rise. The deadliest hotel fire in Chicago history. There were 61 deaths plus one firefighter fatality, and the firefighter that died in this fire was the chief of the 1st Battalion that I currently am today. He died of a heart attack. Changes that occurred because of this deadly fire. The buildings and fire codes, and again, you're going to hear me hammering this home about the fire codes. We had them, we still have them, we try to improve on them all the time, but the fire codes that allowed certain things to happen, again, this was supposed to be a fireproof building. Yeah, I mean, if everything burned out of the building would have survived, the building would stand because of the concrete, but everyone inside could be a fatality. There were no sprinklers at the time. Now there are sprinklers required in all hotels. Enclosed stairways. We had an open staircase that went up the center of that hotel that acted as a chimney and brought the hot gases and the smoke all the way up and killed a lot of those people. Our fire equipment was very old back then, and you know, we had to update our fire department. We had to update our fire equipment to handle these big buildings that were being built in Chicago at the time. And voice communication systems were recommended. We didn't have it back then. There was no way to contact people in that particular building for that event. Look at what a beautiful building that was. And unfortunately, you can see here in the front of the building here, you can see all the ladders. There is one modern ladder, and you can see an aerial ladder there. Over right here, that's an 85-foot ladder, and that was able to get some other people out. And look at all the ground ladders. If you notice that old fire truck there, this fire truck here is from about 1930, and so it was already kind of out of date at the time of the fire. So this is what the interior of the lobby looked like. It was a fire that started inside a lounge area, and probably by smoky materials. People tried to put it out. You know, I should point out, too, that the public, in all these fires I'm showing you, the public didn't act properly. They just didn't do the right thing, probably just because they didn't realize the hazard that was present at the time. But it's really critical that the public is on the same page with what we're doing, because if we're going to have a good outcome, what the people do prior to us getting there is so critical to what the fire department can do once we do get there. And another critical fire that we had, and again, all of these fires that I'm showing you, they've helped shape the city of Chicago, the fire codes, and the fire department itself as to what we do when we come up with tragedy. Our Lady of the Angels was an elementary school comprising kindergarten through 8th grade. The religious school served the west side of Chicago and had an enrollment of 1,600 at the time of the fire. It's the deadliest school fire in U.S. history. 95 deaths, 92 of them were children. And obviously things had to be changed after that because it was just unacceptable. Sprinklers, smoke detectors were required in schools after this. Fire alarm system connections to city fire boxes so that when they pulled the fire box, it actually went to the fire department, and we would be able to respond so much quicker. And again, we come to the stairways. There was an open stairway, open doors on the second floor. The fire started in the basement, quickly traveled up to the second floor, and pretty much incinerated several of those kids up there on that second floor. The other ones had to go out through windows. They had to jump. There were just a lot of things that were really against the fire department and against the students in that building. Removal of transoms over the window, and if you don't know what or over the doors rather, if you don't know what a transom is, it's like a little window over a door and was very common back many years ago. So that was a change that was made as a result. There's a picture of what that building looked like. Keep in mind that second floor was loaded with students and teachers, and they just really had no place to go. Valiant effort by the fire department. There's ladders almost at every window. But because of a series of mistakes, and again, I got to go back to some of the mistakes the public made prior to us getting there, there were just a lot of fatalities. Here's a famous picture of a firefighter bringing down one of the students. And actually what you're seeing here is it looks like he's just carrying the student down from from the second floor and out, but they had, similar to like a bucket brigade, they were just carrying bodies out and passing bodies out, and a very, very sad fire, and it just something that really shook the core of the city of Chicago. You know, may I add something? As far as this fire is concerned, there has not been a fire death in a school building in the city of Chicago since this fire. And also, the same can be said of the Iroquois Theater back in 1903. There has not been a fire death in a theater in the city of Chicago since these fires. So we have been proactive in changing things to make sure that these terrible tragedies don't happen again. Here's the second floor of that Our Lady, the Angel School fire. And if you notice over the doors, these are the transoms. These are the things that I was talking about that occurred in the LaSalle Hotel fire. The transoms were cracked open. The smoke and the heat went right up and got right in, and it just was a real a terrible tragedy. Okay, that brings us to the Cook County building. The Cook County building is a 37-story commercial high-rise that was built in 1962. At 475 feet or 145 meters, it was the tallest concrete office building in Chicago when completed. Presently, and at the time of the fire, it houses government offices and courtrooms. So again, 145 meters. The fire was on the 12th floor. There were 6 deaths, and they were all found in the stairwell. So what occurred because of that, okay? And I'm going to show you a video clip here in a minute, but requirement of sprinklers in commercial buildings. And today we have sprinklers in all commercial buildings. Back then it wasn't required. CFD high-rise incident command changed. We thought we had a good one until this fire, and we figured out that if we're not checking, if we're not doing our searches and rescues, if we're not checking above the fire properly, we're going to end up with problems. And obviously you can see here with 6 deaths, that's just unacceptable. Establishment of specific command functions. We want to make sure that upon arrival, that fire companies, fire crews knew what was expected of them, and they didn't need to be told initially what they had to do. Predetermined company assignments, companies that were going to search the upper floors, companies that were going to search the stairwells, companies that were going to be in charge with fire suppression. That's all in place today. Rapid searches of all stairways. To this day, if we have a fire in a high-rise building, we do top-to-bottom searches. We search all stairways from top to bottom, and we're not done at that scene until we've done that. And then two-way radios for all firefighters. And today, every firefighter on the Chicago Fire Department has a two-way radio. And then last but not least is the education of building staff and occupants. It is so critical that the building staff is on the same page with what we want them to do and what is expected of them. In this particular fire, the building engineer put an all evacuation notice that put these people in the stairwells and put them into places they shouldn't have been. If the people that were found dead in these stairways stayed where they were at, they would be alive today. This is what the building looked like. If you notice, we're using master streams from tower ladders on the outside of the building. Fortunately, on the 12th floor, we were able to deploy that. This turned out to be a wind-driven fire, which means once those windows failed, the fire was pushed into the building and not out of the building. So it was being pushed in on the crews that were trying to come in off of the stairways, and it just, pardon the upside down, but this is pretty much what the building looked like. And I thought I had video, but apparently it's not playing. But anyhow, this is what the building looked like when firefighters arrived. You can see the heavy smoke coming out of there. You can see glass coming down. But if you notice, what's one thing you don't see? You don't see any fire. Okay, so that indicates to me that fire is being pushed into the building and onto the firefighters who are trying to make the rescue. Here's a little bit later in the fire. The fire really was brought under control within an hour, but the searches weren't totally made until probably 45 minutes to an hour after that. So you can see that this is one of the lucky survivors that came down. There were 6 that didn't survive, and it really shook the core of the fire department that something like this could happen. Something like this, a fire that we thought we had under control and that we had done a good job at until we started finding that there were people trapped in the stairwell that we didn't even know about. So there definitely were mistakes made there, but there also were lessons learned there. Now this is what the fire area looked like. The fire started in a storage closet up on the 12th floor, and it quickly spread to the rest of the area. If you notice, you can see the common ceilings there that the fire was able to spread through, and it just devastated that area. But again, all the people in that area got out. All the people on the floor directly above got out. But the people that were up on the 29th floor, they didn't. They ended up perishing in a place they shouldn't have been. So with similar challenges of a stubborn fire on an upper floor, the LaSalle Bank building is a 45-story skyscraper, approximately 163 meters tall, with 4 22-story towers on its 4 corners. The building is home to banking industry and other various tenants. So, like I said, 535 feet or 163 meters. Fire on the 29th and 30th floor, obviously non-sprinkled, but this building was being retrofitted, and at the time of the fire, sprinklers were up to the 28th floor. So they were close, but they weren't quite there. There were no deaths at this fire. Okay, things were handled a little bit different here. Changes that occurred, setting up a dedicated triage and treatment areas. Okay, you know, unlike the previous fire, which was only 14 months before this at the county building, the ambulances were just brought in, backed up to the front door, victims were brought down, and kind of treated on the go. Well, we decided that's not the best way to do it. We should have a treatment area, triage area already set up in the lobby, which we currently do today, and it works really good. If we have victims, they get brought down, they get triaged, and then they get treated, and then they get brought to the hospital. Okay, using a helicopter. We now use helicopters to, not for firefighting purposes, but to survey the top of these buildings, to give the incident commander information about what's going on from the top side of the building. Are there people on the roof? Is there fire in a section of the building or a sector of the building that we can't see from the ground? And they can be very useful. Also, we have a vehicle called a command van, and a command van is a building that is, or a vehicle rather, that assists us with incident command and more so communications. And it's something that's on the outside of the building and also logistics. And we reposition more of those type companies so that they can be closer in when we get a big fire in the downtown area. You can see the fire up there on the 29th floor. It eventually lapped up to 30. Again, the fire went wind-driven. We ended up hitting it from hose lines on the outside of the building, from the adjacent towers, and we were able to control that fire. Let's see if we got a video here. And this is upside down. I'm sorry about that, but anyhow, that's what the fire looked like when the fire department got there. And you can see it's coming out of a couple of different windows at this point, and ended up taking not only the 29th floor, but also the 30th floor. And but again, the searches were made before they used both staircases. They made sure there was nobody left in that building, and then they could get a fire front from 2 different floors. Look at all the SCBA bottles that we had incident command successfully set up in the lobby. We were bringing support with the SCBA bottles, more oxygen. You can see in the background where you see we have these logistic boards set up, and we got one for fire, one for EMS, so we can keep track of the firefighters that we bring in, and we can keep track of exactly what their functions are. So that's kind of a great picture of the lobby area. You can also see a chief by the elevator, and here's a command panel here, voice communication. You can see that firefighter talking on the red phone there. He's talking to another firefighter. We have these two-way phones set up in all of our high-rise buildings. They're set up every 5 floors for the fire department so that they can report to the lobby, because the radios get busy and there's just not enough time to talk sometimes. You just can't get through. If you notice that black microphone on the left there, that's a one-way voice communication where we can let the people in the building know exactly what's going on and give them up-to-date scenarios of the fire, telling them what to do. If we want them to move somewhere, we tell them exactly where to go. So nobody's in the dark. Everybody knows exactly what's expected of them. So and here's some of those tactical boards I was talking about. And you can see there's one of them's for EMS, one of them's for fire, and we're keeping a running total of all the companies that are in there, where they're at, what they're doing, what the fire crews are doing, and this is a huge help to the incident commander who's trying to run this operation. So, what did we learn here? What were the lessons learned in this particular fire? Okay, With similar challenges of this stubborn fire on the upper floor of an occupied non-sprinkled building, why was the outcome so much better at the LaSalle Bank fire as opposed to the Cook County fire? Okay, LaSalle Bank employees and staff were educated in fire awareness. As a matter of fact, within a month of this fire, they had a major fire drill in this building. So unlike the Cook County building where people weren't really aware of what they should do in a fire, they certainly were here. Command staff roles were clearly defined. So the incident commander knew exactly what was expected of him or her, and they carried it out properly. We used voice communication systems to let the civilians know, the occupants of the building, exactly what they should be doing, and they listened. Efficient use of two-way radios. You know, it's one thing to put a bunch of radios out there, but it's another thing to be able to have the discipline to use them properly. And that's something we learned after the first fire was, if you're going to talk, make sure you're telling something that's pertinent to the incident and something that really needs to be said. We used a shelter-in-place strategy. Basically told people to stay where they were until we could get to them. We also sheltered-in-place firefighters, just going from a fire attack stairwell with our hose lines and waiting until we knew the building was evacuated before we started to contaminate another staircase. And again, the use of a fire attack and evacuation stairwell. So we made specific designations and we still do that today. We have a definite designation for a fire attack stairwell. We need to use that for firefighting and firefighting only. We are not going to bring people down that stairway. The evacuation stairwells are also clearly defined. And then we also use our rapid ascent teams that are used to the hook and ladder companies that are used to bring the civilians down. Tactical boards, as I already pointed out, were used in the lobby. And the 911 dispatchers did a tremendous job. And there's your incident commander. 911 dispatchers did a tremendous job. So are we really ready for the inevitable? Okay. Establish an SOP. You need a good SOP, a standard operating procedure. Firefighter training. Accountability for building management. Walk-through and pre-fire planning, witness building evacuation drills, participate in live scenarios. And you got to provide the resources to these people through the Fire Prevention Bureau, through public education section. Here are some of the handouts we have. Here's where the pre-fire plan is. There's our book that we go by. Here's a cabinet in one of the high-rise buildings that has all sorts of equipment and material for a disaster in that building. There's a computer at the same building, the Massey plan, that gives us all sorts of information. Here we are interacting with the building services. Here we are doing a high-rise drill in one of our biggest buildings, the Aon building. You can see all the fire companies out there, and we're working with the building team to go up there and simulate a fire, in this particular case on the 83rd floor. And here are our incident commanders talking. And here we are up. We actually smoked up the 75th floor, rather, in this building. And there you can see we're pulling out a victim, and we've got our big hoses stretched to take care of this fire. And it takes a team to do what we did. And here's all your incident commanders. Here's our fire commissioner, Jose Santiago, with the building management and the building team. They're on board with what we have. So in summary, I'd like to say once again that it has been an honor and a privilege to speak to you today on a topic that I have a great passion for. If there's one thing I've learned over 36 years on the job, it's never get complacent. We know that fires are inevitable. Bad decisions lead to bad outcomes. Preparation and training lead to good outcomes. Are we proactive or reactive? When we work together, we will win. I want to thank the Dubai Civil Defense for giving me this opportunity. This has been a tremendous privilege for me to be here today, and I want to thank all of you for being here and listening. Thank you.